Hello everyone, welcome to the second portion of Church of Blow Rewatch, which is Bernard Smith. Now, who is Bernard? What is Bernard? Where did this come from? Why is it important to me? Why is it still important to me? And why is there still unfinished business left? I'm gonna go way back, way back to my childhood. As I said before, I grew up in South Paris, Maine, which is middle of nowhere. As I said, that got two things: Oxford Plains Speedway, Celebration Barn Theater. When I was, of course, as you know from other videos, I spent my childhood making videos. I had an older brother and sister. We made Super 8 films together. I also spent my childhood dreaming up impossible to realize films. And I was never thinking in terms of a career, in fact, still not. Just, it's always been a matter of, I have something in my head, I want it to exist, how do I make it exist? And when I was 14 years old, I started hearing about that there was a movement to get a public access TV station in our town. I think public access is still a thing in some places, but basically a local TV station that had equipment where anyone could come in, learn how to use the equipment, and then make TV shows that would be shown locally. And sometimes you could get it to play at other stations across the country. But it was, at the time, the closest thing we had to YouTube, except they provided equipment. And there was also this demo tape that was making the rounds for something called a video toaster. And you can look this up on YouTube, video toaster demo. And I can't stress how revolutionary this was at the time. It looks really silly now, but this was the early 90s. Digital editing, compositing, rudimentary 3D animation. This was all prohibitively expensive, but the video toaster was the first thing where it was still very expensive to buy, but for a public access TV station, very easy, very accessible. And when I saw this demo, I just thought to myself, that's it. Everything I've ever dreamt of, I can do. And so I started calling, talking to anyone who would listen to me, anyone on this board, that board. I was attending selectmen meetings. I would tell people my story. I'd talk about the films me and my brother made. I'd talk about what I wanted to do, my ambitions and all this stuff. And it was the most politically active I've ever been in my life, and I was 14. And you know, it was great. It's like I made friends, and people listened to my stories, and it was crazy. And also, you know, it's like I went to the selectmen meetings, and I would listen to these old men saying, I don't know, it kind of scares me. What are they gonna produce with this stuff? It's like there was fucking nothing to do in South Paris at that time. Except a lot of people on my age were on drugs. It's like, what the fuck? What? Why? You're scared of the content of what they'll produce? You know what? Yeah, the worst that'll happen is they'll learn a skill that might lead to a career. But, and of course, the great irony is that when the station finally emerged, most of what it ever played were selectmen meetings. The very people who make those complaints. In fact, I wanted to do a fake movie trailer for Paris Selectmen's Meeting, the movie, which I never did. Anyway, so about a year later, I was 15 years old, we had a public access station. And at the time, it was such an anticlimax because the guy that they hired to run the station was just the most passionless. He was just doing a job. He didn't give a shit, didn't want to hear my stories, didn't care. Didn't care if anyone did anything at the station. I think he was using a lot of the budget for things other than TV production. But they had the equipment, they had a video toaster, so, you know, that was the important thing. And a handful of volunteers, you know, And so slowly but surely I got in there. I started making programs. When I was in high school, me and my friends made a sketch comedy show. And that is where me and my friends met the man who I will call Bernard. Bernard is not his real name. This is not a Kramer situation. Bernard was someone who had recently moved back to Maine from Los Angeles, and he wanted to make films. And he really kind of played up the fact that he made it sound like, you know, I'm from LA, I want to make movies, and you should work with me. Because he saw what we were doing, and we had this youthful energy, and I was, you know, influenced by Terry Gilliam at that point. I would come up with unusual angles for things, so it got his attention. And the thing is, it's in terms of filmmaking, it's not that he had stories that he wanted to tell through films. He had a philosophy that he wanted to spread to the world through films. He wanted to use film as that medium, you know, which nothing wrong with that. It's just that storytelling wasn't, but though he was interested in Joseph Campbell. That's where I heard about Joseph Campbell for the first time, Hero's Journey, all that stuff. In fact, it's like he would tell us these things, and it just blew our minds because we were hearing it for the first time, and because he had that sort of guru aura about him, which I think he did deliberately. But of course, the problem with his approach was, I mean, in our group there were no writers to speak of. Me and my friends, we would make things up as we went along. I try to shoot them and edit them in interesting ways. And this guy just he was just thinking big in terms of what, you know, the story themes. It was convoluted, but he was, so he just thought, well, if I can combine your youthful, you know, energy and the way you shoot things with my, you know, my themes and my thing, but there was no in between. And so literally, like, we'd be shooting something and we'd be like, okay, so what's in this shot? He goes, well, this is Persephone's the goddess, and then this, and then, no, I mean, what is in the frame has 4 walls. What happens in the frame? It's Prometheus and the fire. No, the fire. And it was just fucking impossible. And it was, and the ambition was we made this film, and he wanted to get the whole town involved, which, you know, not a bad idea. Where it's like, you know, you would get the hospital involved. We'd be using real, why the fuck can't I think of the word? Ambulances, you know, things like, or just like shooting on location at the local diner, all these places, and made it seem like we had a budget when we really didn't. You know, all good idea. It's just that there was no story. There was a loose story, but it was kind of like, and yeah, a lot of it was made up. It's like, I'm okay with shooting things, but it needed some preparation. So it's like, you know, drifting, wandering camera as people are, you know, you can't just be, you can't be Robert Altman on no budget on a shitty video camera with when the people aren't mic'd. It just doesn't, so yeah, the film that we made was a piece of shit, but as it was all falling apart, it's like he would get more, you know, stressed out about it, because he felt the pressure, and he goes, it's just like everyone, it's like everyone's judging me, and like you know, now because I got the whole town involved, and it doesn't turn out like, and he would blame all of us. Keep in mind, we were all in high school. Bernard was in his late 20s, so but he was putting all the pressure on us to make this, for this movie to be good. And then he would later claim that he was like, well, I was trying to put you through like a Hollywood type situation. I was putting the pressure on you so that you'll know that when you're in that situation, how to deal with it. It's like, yeah, fuck you, that's bullshit. And years later, he was still justifying it. But anyway, so that was Bernard. Bernard, again, as I said, he kind of had like, there was a kind of a cultish aura to the whole thing, and you know, and this was like, we're doing something important, and so we're all part of this group, this company, and we're all, you know, pooling together, and so like, you know, if one of us makes it, we all make it. It was that kind of thing. That kind of cultish aura, and I've, you know, since then I've encountered other creative types that are like that. They're well, I mean, those types exist everywhere. I mean, and of course the problem, of course, is you know, on a film, there's only got to be one person who's really passionate about, you know, everyone else might be there because, you know, it's a job, or because, oh, that sounds like fun, you know, in the independent film, I'll help out, do whatever. But there's the people where it's like, no, it's like we all have to be on the same page here. We all have to, you know, this has to be important to all of us. So you're either in or you're out. And as soon as one person starts to fall behind, you know, then, see, Bernard, he was very good at turning everyone in the group against someone. It's like, he would remain aloof. He wouldn't get angry at you. He would get everyone else angry at you. And again, we were in high school. It's pretty easy to manipulate us. And we would, so like me and my friends, we'd be mad at each other, and we'd be fighting, and we realized, why are we fighting? Oh, we're fighting because of something Bernard told us. So that was happening a lot. So that, again, that was Bernard. And we spent a lot of our time hanging out at a place called Shainer's, which was, you know, the local diner. That's where I first started drinking coffee. It was terrible coffee, but you never forget your first coffee love. And, you know, we spent a lot of time there discussing things, and I remember one time Bernard wanted to get us to put a tape recorder, or like press record, and then he told us about this idea he wanted to do. Then a couple months later, we hear about this film that's coming out. Now, I may have the timeline slightly wrong, but I think the film was Dark City. And he said, look at this film. This is the film that I wanted to make. This. Look what they did. And Dark City came and went. And then Truman Show comes out and goes, no, this is the film. This. See, look. It's the same thing. It's this guy in this manufactured world. This is the film I was gonna make. Truman Show comes and goes. Matrix comes out. I said, no, this is the film. Remember the film I told you about? This is the film. They ripped me off. And of course, The Matrix, all of those films have something in common. They're all about, you know, manufactured worlds. Matrix is the most unambiguously, you know, I'm having the worst vocabulary today. You know, why has the word left me? I had it earlier. I was kind of trying to think this through. You know, like biblical, basically, or like a, you know, hero's journey type mythological story. And also draws it's very, very on the nose in so many ways. I remember when I was in screenwriting class, the teacher used The Matrix as an example, because he said, you know, stories are generated by characters making decisions. And The Matrix really hits this on the nose by saying, okay, here's two pills. Stay in this world or leave this world. Here, take a pill. You know, it's so stupid and obvious, no wonder it's been appropriated the way it has been in today. Anyway, so, okay, so The Matrix. He was like saying, The Matrix, they ripped me off. The Wachowskis, they ripped me off. It's like, I knew it must be the Wachowskis because they went to Bard, and I used to hang out at Bard. And I was like, really? My brother went to Bard. I don't remember. When were you in Annandale, New York? How did this happen? And then he was like, oh, and he just kind of... quietly stop saying that. But yeah, he seemed to think that The Matrix must have been his idea. The Matrix being the most obvious allegory is what I meant to say from the beginning. Allegory, the most obviously allegorical story you can imagine, drawing very consciously from, you know, different mythologies and so forth. But clearly it must have come from him. But anyway, so this happened a lot. And it just became a joke. Like, aha, someone's stealing your ideas. And it wasn't until I remember when the movie Being John Malkovich came out. And it wasn't even the movie itself. It was first of all, the name, when I first heard that this movie was coming out. Being John Malkovich. And I was a John Malkovich fan. I thought it sounded intriguing. And when I heard the premise is about finding a portal into John Malkovich's mind. And when I saw the movie, I thought it was fine. But it was more like when I heard about it, really started getting my mind racing. And then I started thinking about Shainer's and the whole aura of that place and setting a story in Shainer. You know, all these broken souls, these artists. And just thinking about, you know, what happens when two people have the same idea? Why does that happen? And building a story around that. And so that's when that started to come about. And then a couple years later, I was in film school. Bernard was back in Los Angeles. And I thought he was out of my life for good at that point. Like, I was in film school. I was like, okay, I'm meeting new friends. I've left that world behind. And, but I started thinking about Shainer's, and I started thinking about that world, and I wrote a short story for my writing course, with the same teacher who was trashing The Matrix, and then I was thinking about Shainer's, and I was trying to remember details about the place, and I wanted to pick someone's brain, someone who was there at that time, see what they could add to this process, and so I emailed Bernard and told him about story. Remember that old joke we used to have? And before I knew it, we were working on it together, which is not what I intended. But it's like, he was like saying, oh yeah, that's great, and oh, I have this software, it's called Dramatica, and it writes your story for you. You just enter the information. It's like, no, it's like I'm at my snobbish, the snobbiest film school phase. Like, no. I mean, well, even now, software writing your fucking story for you just appalls me. But like, especially then, it's like, no, I don't want this. And like, before I know it, is like saying, yo, okay, give me some more ideas for this. You know, keep them coming, and I'll enter them in, and we'll churn this thing out. And I was like, oh fuck. And so the project died a natural death. Just kind of crashed and burned. Cut to years later, I'm making YouTube videos. I start working with Ishmael. We do a few things together, and I thought, okay, this guy's really funny. Maybe I should tell him about the idea theft idea, and maybe we can do something with that. Maybe it could be a monologue or one of my, those early photo montage things that I was doing, something like that. He could be some paranoid internet guy. And he liked the idea, and so that was kind of, in his brain. And so then when we got to the point in Church of Below where we realized, okay, the twist is that Cornelius is played by an actor, Bernard Smith, and so the series then becomes about Bernard the actor and the trials of his life. And then it was Ishmael who said, wait, wouldn't your idea theft work for this? I said, yeah. Oh God. Yes. Perfect. And so that's how those ideas merged. It was an idea that I always wanted to turn into a motion picture, and I still do. And even when it became part of Bernard, I always still wanted to do it as a movie, and the movie would be different. The movie would go back to the original setting, and would be more based in my life and how things actually happened, except it would also be very surreal. But that's how those ideas came together. But the real Bernard was not pleased about this. And so that is my introduction. And in the next video, I will begin watching the series itself, and I will tell more stories as I go. Barely touched this. All right. Well, this has been Bernard Smith, an introduction.